What do you think of when you hear the word lumberjack? Do you think of two stocky dudes with thick beards and red and black checkered shirts pulling one of those long two-person saws back and forth? That's a common image you might think of, but today we'll learn a lot more about lumberjacks. Michigan's known for our automobile assembly lines, Motown, sand dunes, and lakes, but did you know there once was a thriving lumber industry here? In fact, from 1869 to 1900, Michigan was the leading producer of lumber in the United States of America. Today, the industry is smaller, but it's still present, and we still need lumberjacks. Hi everybody, I'm Jeff Kass, and today we're going to explore the history of Michigan's lumberjacks by learning a form of poetry called a blues poem. Blues poems come from the distinctly American music form known as the blues. This genre, or type of music, developed in the South after the Civil War among formerly enslaved African Americans and their descendants. Blues songs generally featured a solo artist who plays guitar and sings. They were inspired by religious hymns, folk songs that had been sung during field work, but mostly just the idea that sometimes life is hard, and singing about it can be a way to work through that struggle. Some of the most famous blues practitioners include Robert Johnson, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Leadbelly, and B.B. King. Most of the songs followed a simple lyrical pattern where each verse consists of 3 lines. The first line introduces the topic. The second line repeats the first line, sometimes with a slight variation. The third line comments on, expands, or offers an idea in conflict with the 2 previous lines. And the last word in the third line rhymes with the last word in the 2 previous lines. An example of a verse from a blues song, it might go something like this. My dog got lost last night in a storm. Oh, I said my dog got lost last night in a storm. Wow, I sure hope she found some place to keep warm. You see how line 1 introduces the topic? Last night my dog got lost in a storm. Then line 2 repeats line 1, but with a little remix. Then my third line expands the topic in line 1, my dog was lost in a storm, and I hope she found somewhere warm. As you can also see, the last word in line 3, warm, rhymes with the last words of lines 1 and 2, storm. So now, let's talk about the blues poem. This form was popularized by Langston Hughes, the famous poet from the Harlem Renaissance. It imitates the form of the blues song and creates several 3-line stanzas that explore a particular struggle or challenge. So what's a stanza? A stanza in a poem is a little chunk of lines that belong together, kind of like a verse in a song or a paragraph in a book. Now, let's think about lumberjacks in Michigan. We want to write a blues poem about them, but first, we're going to have to do some research to understand the struggles they might have encountered. Some things I learned about lumberjacks from my research were that most of the tree cutting happened in winter and that there were no roads through the forest. So people couldn't just drive in from their houses for the day, cut trees, and then go home to their families for dinner. What do you think they might have done instead? If you guess they had to stay at the work site, you're right. Loggers built camps that the lumberjacks would live in for months at a time, and they wouldn't be able to see their families. That sounds hard. And we're talking about the 1800s here, so there wasn't any electricity in the camps or running water or anything like that. The men worked long hours, often waking at 4 in the morning and working until 8 or 9 at night. It was also very dangerous. Loggers were killed every year by falling trees landing on them, by axe or saw mishaps, disease, or sometimes even by freezing to death. Not that it was all miserable. The food in the camps was apparently plentiful: bread, potatoes, beans, tea, and pork. And men would spend downtime telling stories, singing songs, or playing cards. All this research has got me ready to start my lumberjack blues poem. First, I made a list of words that were related to Michigan lumberjacks. How about this? Road, cold, logs, trees, saw, axe, camp, tent, alone, boots, and wood. Then I thought about words that rhyme with my first set of words, and I added them to my list. For example, snowed rhymes with road. And cramp, lamp, stamp, those are all words that rhyme with camp. Now I'm going to work on an opening stanza for our blues poem, keeping in mind the lyrical pattern to write it. I think I'll write something about the camp itself. How about this? Michigan Lumberjack Blues poem. I feel so lonely in this frozen camp. Oh man, I feel so lonely in this frozen camp. Can't even read at night. We ain't got no lamp. Now it's your turn to connect some of this Michigan history while writing a blues poem. Write your own Lumberjack Blues poem that describes what Michigan lumberjack life was like. For your first stanza, talk about camp life. Go ahead and use the stanza that we wrote together if that helps you get started, or write your own if you prefer. For the second stanza, write 3 lines describing how lumberjacks may have missed being home with their families. For the third stanza, write 3 lines about food at camp. Make the last stanza a topic that you choose. Once you're done with your blues poem, read it to a friend or a family member. Pretend you're in front of a campfire sharing your writing with fellow lumberjacks while their hands hover over an open flame. Let your words keep them warm.